Whatever this was not from this earth. If we are living in the last days, then we need to stand up and look at what the enemy and what is manifesting on a global scale. UFOs are global and the sightings are through the roof. The church needs to understand they're being indoctrinated. And the church needs to stand up and say, no, these are not extraterrestrials. These are interdimensional entities. When they show up, it will change everything that we know and do it in a nanosecond.
L.A. Marzulli, it is awesome to have you here in studio at
great to be
Charisma. We've done so many interviews virtually.
I
That
know.
is great to be able to be here in person. And I need to ask you, what is truth?
Wow, what is the truth?
What is the truth?
What is the truth? The truth is that Jesus spoke everything into existence and he holds everything together. Colossians, he holds everything together. And with that in mind, think about the implications of that. Think about laminin, that little thing that they discovered. It's in all living things. And if you were to remove laminin, everything would fall apart. With that in mind, truth is Jesus's words, the biblical prophetic narrative, the prophecies that we have from Genesis to Revelation, the only book on the planet, the only book. Yes, you got Nostradamus, but those prophecies are very fuzzy. Yes, you've got the Hopi Indians. They've got a few prophecies. Okay, I get that. But the biblical prophetic narrative is the only tome on the planet that has this thread of prophetic literature from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation. And it calls events out with great specificity. Mm-hmm. They're not vague. You know, we know that at some point in time, Jesus is going to come back. His feet will touch the Mount of Olives, and that baby's going to split in two. Oh, that's just an allegory, L.A. No, it's not. It's not an allegory. It's literal. Amen. And that is future, and I hope I have a ringside seat for that.
The reason I ask you what is truth is I know that that's been a passionate message for your life. But in our world today, we are seeing so much deception.
Correct.
Leading to what the Bible calls the great deception. And actually, that's why you wrote the book, The Rungs of Disclosure, to really prepare the church for the answers of why, what is actually the truth when this deception comes. Since you wrote the book, Rungs of Disclosure, there has actually been more rungs added to
Correct.
it. And you can go to the website, which I'll let you say.
Rungsofdisclosure.com.
Rungsofdisclosure.com to see the updated list of all of those. But L.A., I want to talk about the church being asleep to this and really writing off the seriousness of it, because there has been a long game that's been played by the enemy. You
know, Jesus warns us in the Matthew 24 discourse, in Luke 21, Mark 13, the synoptic gospels, basically saying the same thing. Do not be deceived, do not be deceived, do not be deceived. In that same chapter, he talks about, you know, men fainting from fear from what's coming upon the earth. Now, that could be a mile-wide asteroid. I get that. But what if it's a mile-wide UFO, right? I mean, you know, no, it's not. No, it's not. And yes, we need to understand the Bible, and yes, we need to study biblical passages. But if we are living in the last days, which I truly believe we are, in the end times, then we need to stand up and look at what the enemy and what is manifesting on a global scale. And I remember the late Jim Tetlow and I, this goes back 20 years, we would talk about, well, he believed that the Great Deception would be Marian apparitions. And I said, Jim, I agree with you in part, but I don't think that's it. Because the Marian apparitions are in a few places. We did a whole film on this with Fatima, showing all the other places that they show up, like Medjugorje and other places, Ireland, Knock Ireland. But UFOs are global, and the sightings are through the roof. I mean, if you took a curve like this, it just goes up. So you have 1945, you have Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 1947, the Roswell event. We have 2 films on that, by the way. And we talk about it in Rungs of Disclosure. 1948, Israel becomes a nation, which is absolutely an unprecedented event, which fulfills the prophecy of Amos 9. You know, I will bring back the captives of my people, Israel. They will build the waste cities and inhabit them. They will plant vineyards and drink the wine from them. They will also plant gardens and eat the fruit from them. Here's the kicker. I will plant them in their land, and never again will they be plucked up out of the land I have given them, says the Lord your God.
Right.
Well, 1948, the whole UFO thing just takes off like this. It's unbelievable. And now, you know, in the 50s, you get the flyby. Now you start getting abductions, cattle mutilations. Yes, there were cattle mutilations before. Yes, there were some abductions before. I get all that. But right after Israel, that's almost like the clock starts ticking. The dragon knows, the enemy knows what's going on. It's his time, and he's going after this thing.
Yeah.
So the whole UFO phenomena with all its particulars, cattle mutilations, abductions, crop circles, flybys, close encounters of the first, second, third, and fourth kind, the whole thing just takes off like this. And the bottom line is, this is what's manifesting. And it's the dark side. It's Hell's Kitchen. It's the machinations of the evil one. And the church, unfortunately, for the most part, is completely asleep. Now, I'm painting with a broad brush.
Sure.
But the church won't even deal with it. I mean, like, I've had people come up to me and go, you know, LA, I brought my pastor the Rungs of Disclosure book, and he sort of patted me on my head and gave it back to me. You know, I don't need to read that. I'm quoting. I don't need to read that. I only go by what the Holy Spirit tells me. That's ignorance and arrogance. You know, what about what the Holy Spirit gave me, which is why I wrote the book.
Exactly.
Look, UFOs are real burgeoning and not going away. This is the coming great deception. But when we go up, they come down. When we go up, they show up. That's the word for 2025. I'm not giving a date of the rapture. Please don't misunderstand me. But I think we're close to some event, life-changing event. If UFOs were not manifesting the way they are, with all of its particulars, with all of its very complex paradigm, then I wouldn't be talking. I'd be looking for what was. But this is it. And then when you get the abduction phenomenon where people were taken, and you know, folks, if you're a pastor and you're watching this, I challenge you to go up to your pulpit and go and say this to your congregation. I need to see a show of hands. How many of you have seen lights in the sky, orbs, UFOs, had an encounter, had sleep paralysis? Raise your hand. I guarantee over 30% of the people in your congregation, hands will go up, because I've done this, and it's unbelievable. And then the pastor goes, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Because we have this form of religion, but we deny its power. And we need to understand that this is manifesting. This will, when they show up, it will change everything that we know and do it in a nanosecond.
Yeah.
And that's alarming.
And our culture has basically been, there's some predictive programming that has been laid out for decades. A lot of
predictive programming.
And you've actually, in many conversations, we've talked about this on and off camera, but there has been, you know, H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds.
Right.
There's been stories, even you can go back to Greek mythology and this stuff. Basically, all throughout history, there is a thread of otherworldly beings or godlike creatures, and they have their own stories, their own agenda, and, you know, we kind of now play it off as entertainment. We have a whole genre of superhero movies, which I love, by the way. They're a lot of fun, but they come from somewhere. And this disclosure is not just like, we're opening up a file now. It's been more of a slow leak. Can we talk about that?
Well, I mean, you know, the first rung on the ladder of disclosure is Commander David Fravor on Tucker Carlson show. I'll never forget it. It's December 2017. I'm watching Tucker. He's at that time he's on Fox News.
Yeah.
And he leads it off by saying something like this. I'm not quoting directly, but very similar. UFOs used to be the stuff of tinfoil hat wearing people and conspiracy theorists, but maybe we shouldn't think about that anymore. Commander David Fravor joins us tonight. Commander David Fravor is a former F-18 pilot, and he had an encounter with a tic-tac-shaped UFO over the Pacific Ocean. Cuts to David Fravor. So it's Tucker, Commander David Fravor, and over here, so it's a triptych, 3 panels are going. Over here, they're showing, which at one time was classified, footage of a UFO on camera. And Commander David Fravor, you know, he's kind of like a little bit like, maybe it's his first big interview, Fox News, and he's a little uptight and his, you know, the deer in the headlights look kind of thing. And he goes, when you engage with this, Tucker asked him, when you engage with this UFO, this tic-tac shaped UFO, when it left the scene, how fast did it go? And Commander David Fravor looks right at the camera, 50 miles in 2 seconds. And a light bulb goes off in Tucker's head. Well, that would kill a human being. And he goes, yeah, I know. And what's happening is there's a gravity wave. This is conjecture on my part, but it's based on the work of Bob Lazar, who worked at Area 51 and wrote about this in the 90s. I actually got to interview him at the Little Alien outside of Area 51 in 1990. Yeah, Little Alien in 1994. You have a gravity wave. Here's the craft. The gravity wave is moving the craft. So you're outside of space-time as we know it. That's why right-angle turns. That's why there's no G-forces, because the gravity wave is moving through space and time, manipulating space-time as we know it. Now, that's theoretical, but it makes a lot of sense on some level. So, you know, they're talking back and forth. Commander David Fravor, yeah, I'd like to fly it. Tucker goes, yeah, I bet you would. And Tucker goes, could this be Russians or the Chi-Coms? And David Fravor goes, no, I know what they have. It's nothing. And so finally, it's a little 5-minute segment at the end of the show on a Friday night. You know, who's watching? I am. And he goes, well, in your opinion, what do you think this was? And Commander David Fravor, this guy's an F-18 pilot. He's the best of the best of the best. There's no doubt about it. You don't get to fly an F-18 if you're Elmer Fudd. It ain't going to happen. Or, you know, you're hitting too much booze before you get on the plane. Yeah. That's not going to happen. This is the best of the best. Stand-up guy, straight shooter all day long. He looks right at the camera, and he says, whatever this was not from this earth. And I about fell out of my chair. That served for the nexus for the rungs of disclosure book. That was the first rung on the ladder of disclosure. Since then, it's been going up the ladder of disclosure. And this is why the church needs to talk about this. Our Congress, your congressmen and women are discussing this in the halls of Congress, where people are under oath. They're not, you know, telling a lie, because if they are, they're under oath. That's, you know, you just perjured yourself. You're in a heap of trouble, boy. And so it's, I'm in the South. I can use that, right? Ball, you're in a heap of trouble. Foghorn Leghorn, but I digress. The halls of Congress, David Grush, which was the 16th rung on the ladder of disclosure. The book only has 17. Since then, we're up to rung number 20. That's where we are. Yeah. And rungsofdisclosure.com is interactive. So as a new rung happens, as more disclosure happens, I report on it, and you can watch the video. But Commander David Grush, who's a whistleblower, is in the halls of Congress under oath. Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina, you know, ask him, do we have crash craft? And Grush goes, I've already talked about that. I can't say this in a public setting, but I've already discussed it in my News Nation interview. Okay, great. And then she asked a follow-up question. Well, do we have, you know, the pilots from these crash craft? And David Grush looks right up at her and says, yes, we have biologics that were recovered. She does another follow-up question. Well, are these bodies human or non-human biologics? He looks right up at her. And I'm a student of body language. He's not, you know, shying away. He's not nobody. He looks right up at her and says, non-human biologics. I about fell out of a chair again. Yeah. And I went, oh my gosh. You know, and since then, we're up and up and up. Yeah. And, you know, they're preparing us for something. You read articles, you know, sources say Vatican preparing for contact with extraterrestrial life. And I mean, it's there, it's screaming at us. And now, if I can segue into the Egyptian pyramid
I wanted to go there, yeah.
Yeah, we don't know whether that's real or not. So we have to wait and see. We have to wait and see what these scientists, they need to release the data. It needs to be peer review. Zowie Hawass is jumping up and down already stating, you know, pyramid. And they're calling them pyramid idiots and all this stuff. Well, not so fast, Zowie. Let's give these guys a chance and let's see what the data shows. I do not believe that the Egyptians had anything to do with the pyramid complex at Giza. Nothing at all. There's no way they could build it. Yeah. We've demonstrated some of that. And here's the kicker before I get you into the punchline here. The stones that are above the king's chamber, they're huge, massive granite stones, the size of railroad cars. And they are, they come from 500 miles away from the Aswan area.
How do we know that?
Well, because that's where the granite comes from. You can look at the granite and know, oh, the only place that has this type of granite came from Aswan, 500 miles away. So how was it transported? How was it cut? And how was it moved up the pyramid? Sand ramps? Not buying that. So we're looking at a technology many of us have believed that the Egyptians just didn't have. And that what the pyramid is some sort of a power plant. There's books on it, the Giza power plant, some sort of a power plant, ancient grid system before the flood. That's conjecture. But here's the kicker. If the information that's coming out about the pyramid holds true, if there really are these 8 shafts which go down 2,221 feet, whatever it is, below the surface, and then there's these larger structures, and then both ways with tunnels like this underground city, what are we looking at? Because then we know that the Egyptians absolutely had nothing to do with this. So that blows the entire paradigm of Egyptology right out of the water. And that's why people are pushing back. If it holds true, what will happen is the ancient astronaut theorists, heck, Elon Musk already stated it a couple of days ago when because this went viral.
Oh, yeah.
And Elon Musk is stating, well, aliens built them. There you go. There you go. It's already being spun in that direction. The church needs to understand, going back to the original question, that, most of your people in your congregation, their kids and their grandkids watch Ancient Aliens, and they're being indoctrinated. And the church needs to stand up and say, no, these are not extraterrestrials from Epsilon Eridani, Gary Stearman's favorite constellation, or, Zeta Reticuli. These are interdimensional entities. Just like the angel that pops in and sees Daniel thousands of years ago. These are interdimensional entities. Just like 2 Kings chapter 6, when Elisha is there with his servant Gehazi. And Gehazi goes, we're all going to die. We're surrounded by the Syrian army. And Elisha goes, Lord, open my servant's eyes. And he boots Gehazi out of the tent. And Gehazi's sitting there. And what does he do? He comes back and he goes, I saw the chariots of fire. Chariots of fire above the Syrian army. Those are the good guys. That's craft, because Gehazi knows it's a craft, but then thousands of years ago, all he has is a chariot.
Right.
So he says, there's a chariot and fire. There's no lanterns or, there are lanterns, but it's firelight, oil lamps. I saw a chariot of fire. If you and I were there, we'd look up and we go, oh my gosh, UFOs. So it's complex. You tell me what a chariot of fire is. Where am I going wrong here? And I don't think I am. So it's in the biblical prophetic narrative. Your kids and grandkids watch the ancient astronaut, ancient aliens, and they're being indoctrinated that these are extraterrestrial entities. We say no, these are interdimensional entities with a very nefarious agenda. And Rungs of Disclosure, the beginning of that book, there's a whole chapter on the seed war and why it's important to understand that Daniel 2:43 talks about their seed will mingle with the seed of men. Well, whose seed are we talking about? It goes back to the Genesis 3:15 narrative. If we don't have the proper exegesis of Genesis 3:15, when we get to Daniel, we're going like, well, I don't know what that's talking about.
Right.
But it's the mingling of the seed between the dragon seed and human beings. And we've got films on this. We've talked about it. And I get it. Some of you are going, this is really woo-woo. And it's the deep end of the pool, folks. But it's what the dark side is planning. It's what is being cooked up in Hell's Kitchen. It's what the dragon is rolling out.